Hello, we are coming to the end of our unit. So today is our last punctuation lesson, and it is a review, just like last week, of some of the punctuation that we've learned in the last 5 weeks. So, first I want to talk about dashes. Remember, dashes are a long line. They don't have any spaces on either side, but they set apart clauses or phrases that you want to have attention brought to. Think of it sort of as the opposite of a parenthesis. When you've got a parenthesis, it means what's in the parenthesis is not as important as the rest of the sentence. But if it's set off by dashes, it's most likely more important than the rest of the sentence. Hyphens, on the other hand, are half the size, half the length of dashes, so they're short lines, and they go in between words. They join words together, usually in compound adjectives. Now, a compound adjective is usually just two or three adjectives that need to be strung together for it to make sense. So if I stepped in the not yet dry cement, not yet dry is really one phrase working as an adjective, so you need to put hyphens to join those words together. But if it says, I stepped in the cement that was not yet dry, then they don't need hyphens because they're not all working together the way they would before the verb. Yeah, I hope and I know that's not really clear, but compound adjectives, only place you're going to use hyphens probably, again, no space on either side of the line, but it's joining together things. So when I went to college, I lived in on-campus housing. On campus describes housing, right? On does not describe the housing, and campus does not describe the housing. So they have to go together to describe what they are describing, the apartment, the living house. So in that case, you need to put hyphens between those two words. All right, it's hard to describe. I wish I had my whiteboard here and I could write up some examples for you, but give it a shot. Just remember, hyphens join words together that need to be joined together. Dashes separate phrases that you want to accentuate. Then there's the ellipsis. Ellipses are those three dots, and ellipses stand in for missing text. So if I'm quoting someone, but I leave out a few sentences because they're not really relevant to what I'm talking about, then I would need to put an ellipsis there, meaning some of the text is missing here. It's also used in dialogue. If you trail off your sentence, you don't really finish your sentence or your thought, you just sort of trail off like that, then you have the ellipsis at the end of the dialogue. And actually, in dialogue, you use dashes as well. If someone is being interrupted, then you want to end their dialogue with a dash. It signals that they're being interrupted. And finally, the big offender, apostrophes. Apostrophes, they show possession, or they show, like ellipses, that something has been taken out. But in this case, it's letters, not words. An ellipsis shows that words have been removed. An apostrophe shows that letters have been removed, like in cannot turning into can't, do not turning into don't. You all know how to use an apostrophe there. where the missing letters are. You put the apostrophe. It's usually right before a T. Cannot, can't. Do not, don't. Will not, won't. So that's one way that you can use your apostrophe. But the most common use of apostrophes is for possession. So if I own something, or the person I'm talking about owns something, then you need to put an apostrophe S on the end, right? So I am right now using Mr. Doing's computer. So after Mr. Doing, apostrophe S, because the computer belongs to Mr. Doing. If I had multiple, so I've been typing on Mr. Doing's. No, that doesn't work. The students' work was very strong. Students is plural. So you need just the apostrophe at the end because it already ends in an S. So you just put an apostrophe after the S. I think the hard thing about apostrophes is that there are these exceptions. Like plural words that end in S, you need to put it just the apostrophe, not an extra S. But if it's someone's name that has an S at the end, then you can do it either way. So it gets kind of confusing. I'll try to attach a sheet that you can use to remind yourself of how apostrophes are used when you're working on the IXL apostrophes stuff this week. And the last thing about apostrophes is if two people own something, then it is, say, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, right? It's not Ben's and Jerry's ice cream. They own it together, so it's Ben and Jerry's ice cream. The apostrophe S goes on the end of both their names, not each of their names. Now, if they owned something separate, so Ben and Jerry's cars, they each have their own car, so it would be Ben's and Jerry's cars in that case. So, I get it. These are not necessarily easy to remember rules. They have a lot of exceptions, and there are discretionary uses of them, and it can get confusing. But especially with the apostrophes, I'm going to give you a document that you can review with as you are working on your IXL. So that is the end of punctuation. And I will see you next week in this spot talking about our next topic. Yes, next week starts a new unit. So I'll talk to you more about that next week. All right, see you then.